How you doing? Welcome to Black Intelligentsia. We're dealing with the Summer Empowerment Tour. And right now I'm in Tallahassee, Florida. And I'm speaking with a gentleman here that you see on camera. I'm going to let him give you his name, credentials, and we're going to ask some questions. So let me see. Move it up some. All right, sir. How you doing? What's your name?
Good, I'm good. I'm Dana Denard. One of my
Dana.
names, also
Okay.
known as Baba Kamal,
Okay.
and I am a clinical psychologist by training, licensed in Florida as a clinical psychologist, and I've been a professor for almost 30 years, and I'm also a person that's been involved in running my own businesses since I left graduate school back in the 80s. I'm a filmmaker. I just finished my second feature film. Will be out in the world pretty soon. And I'm also a yoga instructor, and I teach a lot of different techniques for people to enhance their life through psychology, yoga, meditation, different things.
Okay. So, how many years you been in your field?
Psychology?
Yes.
Well, I hadn't thought about that. How many years? I started as a drug counselor in 1972.
1970.
1972, before I went to school to become a psychologist. So, been counseling ever since 1972. Yeah, and I went to grad school. I finished grad school in 1987. So I've been licensed since the late 80s, and still practice. I still see clients. I'm a consultant. Do a lot of different things.
And mostly that work has been in Tallahassee or
Mostly,
other places?
mostly in Tallahassee. I did. I ran a hospital in Los Angeles for a year, and, down in South Central LA. But the rest of the time I've been here.
Okay, so for those that may not know, who would you say is like your contemporaries? Those that
Well, I think of myself as a student of a number of people that have been instrumental in promoting what we would call now the African centered concept, or African centering, or African centered philosophy. And so the first person that I spoke with that had an influence on me was Naeem Akbar. And Naeem Akbar is ahead of me several years, but he had a great impact on my stop, look, and listen orientation that I have now. It made me really question what am I doing? Even in psychology, what am I doing? My first year in grad school was his first year here at Florida State. And Naeem said to me that year, he said, you have to get 2 degrees while you're here. 1 degree, you'll get papers for, they'll sign off on it, they'll say doctor. He said, but the 2nd degree, you won't get papers for. You have to do it yourself, but it'll be more important than the other degree. That's in African history and culture. So he kind of put me on that path to study African history and culture. In doing that, I became fascinated by a number of writers who were out there at the time, sort of pioneering this new version of it, because it's been around since the turn of the century, but this new version really got kicked off in the mid 70s, late 70s, and right when I was coming into grad school. And so I'm highly influenced by, I'll say, people like, first of all, Dr. John Henry Clark. I consider him my number uno elder mentor. And people like Amos Wilson, people like Bobby E. Wright, people like Asa Hilliard, uh, people like Wade Nobles, uh, Ashwa Kwesi. These are people that I met along the way that spent a lot of time talking to, being influenced by, kicking around different ideas. So these are my comrades in arms.
Okay, okay. So, in your studies and things, what was the main focus of the community that you really wanted to dive into and look into more than others? Like, if you could put it one, two, three, your top three things that you focus on or thought needed to be looked at more than others.
Well, it kind of happened in stages. Um, See, I told you I was in LA for a year. So when I was in LA, I lived there twice. But the second year, I was running a hospital down in South Central LA, and the hospital was for substance abuse, and I had mostly black young people, crack addicts mostly.
What year was this?
This was like 1989, and a lot of women in that program and their children. And so when I got there, one day they asked me to come and run the group, and I said okay. And so I did, and I asked them what they want to talk about, and a couple of issues came up, but the main one was suicide. And we did talk about suicide that day, but it did something to me. And I left that group. I walked out of there. Really, that was the day that I found my purpose, and shifted my whole idea about what I was going to do with my time for the rest of my life. Because I focused on the fact that here I was with this program with all these young people that they were just entering the prime of their lives, with all the potential and possibility of their lives. They could do anything, and all they could think about was dying, and that just motivated me. And so I said, you know what? I've got to raise soldiers. That's what I said. It's like I got to raise soldiers, and had someone here at the university that had told me, so if you ever come back to Florida, I'll probably be needing to hire some people. So I called them, told them, I said, I think I'm coming back. I got hired at FAMU. That's why I came back to FAMU, because it's a transient population of young people who are seeking, and I came back to raise soldiers. That was the whole point. And so when I came back, looking at how I was going to interface with the community and what I could do, I realized probably the most important issue for us is that we are ignorant of everything. We don't have information about very much, and certainly not about our own history and culture. And I've been studying it, now for probably 10 years at least at that point. So the first thing we did, we opened a bookstore, and I had like a little room that would hold maybe 100 people. And so the first thing I did was open the bookstore. That became kind of like the information center in the city, at least for Black people. And we still have a bookstore next door, right here. I still have it.
Okay. Was this in conjoint or in agreement with Wade Noble's definition of culture?
We share a definition, right? Which is much more focused on the psychology of a human being rather than the externalizing of it. We talk about culture as behavior usually. Like people talk about things like, well, it's how you talk, it's what you eat. But these are all superficial aspects of culture. What Wade talks about culture as a crucible of information processing. That's what culture is. So, and we look at it as a response to essential human questions. Those essential human questions start with definitions like what is it? First question is what? What is reality? Why do you think that's what reality is? How is it defined? Who defined that reality? See, so when we study our own people and our own dialogue about being on this planet, we will see a philosophy of reality that comes from African people. And it doesn't matter where on Africa you go. So we're not talking about ethnic differences. We're talking about a core idea of reality. that's shared on all over this planet. And so when you answer that question, well, what is it? What is reality? That includes what am I as a human being? So like, what is a human being? Is it just because you have, again, the appearance, you got two legs, you got two ears, you know, you got a certain statue, you walk upright, is that what makes you a human being? No, we can always find examples of other things that can do that. So that can't be it. You can teach a bear how to ride a bicycle like a human being, but that doesn't make him a human being. See? So there's something at the core of what a human being is. So once we know what that is, then it becomes how do you perceive in reality? So the second question is, how do you behave? You behave in relationship to your perception of what reality is. You see? And that becomes what we call ritual and custom. Certain ways, behaviors we see among certain people, those people behave in those ways because of the culture. It's transmitted. And we even see with African American people, many times we see the behavior, and people don't even know where the culture came from. They sometimes don't even notice it.
Would you say this
They
brings
carry
about,
it on though.
would you say this brings about a solidarity between those who have similar cultural traits or characteristics from those perceptions?
Well, culture collectively, which is answering those three questions. What is it? Or how do I behave? As a third question, which is why. That's what we refer to as morality or moral demand, right? So, unfortunately, one of our problems is that we keep operating out of our own moral demand and expecting everyone else to operate as if they have the same moral demand, but they don't. So we may ask the question, well, how could all those people go along with this crazy stuff? And it's like, well, they're following a moral demand. Even if they don't notice, they're following a moral demand. So whatever we think is, quote, right or wrong is rooted in whatever we think it is and how we should respond. See? So those three together, that becomes the glue of any people. I don't care who it is. The people are defined by their culture. That's what makes them unique. That's what makes them who they are. So black people, we talk about blackness and black people. We're not talking about skin color, actually. It just so happens that that's one of the correlates. You see that. In other words, you show up with this color. But we're not really talking about color. We're talking about those internal, many times very subjective and subconscious constructs that run the life of the person, which is now that's where the sharing is. The shared cultural experience.
Intrinsic principles that
that are there,
innate,
that are there and will operate unless something interferes with them, which is what we're dealing with, the interference. Wade, you mentioned Wade. Wade has this construct he uses, which I like, where he says, it's like if you can imagine we're saltwater fish trapped in a freshwater tank. It's not enough substance in the water to sustain our lives. And a lot of times when we talk about soul brother, soul sister, that term soul is getting at that definition of something that is behind all this, that is a substance that is really not a part of this culture.
Can we go into spirituality with this?
Well, spirituality is what it is. Although, again, because we have been hijacked, even the word spirituality, I almost hesitate to use it because people think they know what that is, but I'm not sure that they do, because we have a tendency to look at terms even. We don't look at the origins of these words, right? We use them, and we don't look at the origin, so when we don't get the origin, we often miss the actual meaning of the word. Give you an example of how deep it goes. Almost everybody, when you meet them, will give you the greeting, hello. And people say hello back. And nobody even questions, what did I just say? And why is that the greeting? We went to school, we had a so-called education, we heard about root words. The root word of the word hello is hell. It's not much left after hell. It's just an O after that. So what does this word actually mean? And why has it become the greeting? Who greets people like that? It basically says, hell is all around us. That's basically what the word means. Now, why is that the greeting? But that's part of this culture, right? And people are part of this culture. It's not my culture. I don't come from a culture that says hell is everywhere. That's not the culture I come from.
Well, the time frame,
Follow what I'm saying?
the time frame and the cultural context of it would be peace, brother. How you doing?
Exactly. Exactly. Which is 180 degrees away from hell.
Yeah.
Right, see? So that's why I said that you can have a cultural heritage and yet have another culture imposed on it and have you living out somebody else's culture. And that's really our problem. That's the freshwater tank problem that we have. Because we didn't understand that not everybody has the same culture. And how culture is essential. It's not just how you dress or how you speak. Those are after effects.
So, in your very first project dealing with books and stuff, how do you see books, or how did you see books being the primary thing that you wanted to set down?
Yeah, good question. So I had gone to the first time I went to LA. I had gone through Texas, and I was in Houston, and I don't remember how, but I stopped off at the Shrine of the Black Madonna, and this way back in the '80s, and I went into that bookstore, and I was just fascinated. I mean, I had no idea that Black people were producing that many books on all these different subjects that related to us. No idea. And when I got to Los Angeles, there are two bookstores out there. I spent weekends, many weekends at those stores. And I realized that, well, one of the problems that we have, the biggest problem probably, is that we really don't even know what happened. We don't have information about the world that we're in, and especially about our own world. We don't have that. So that was the first thing. My first job is to begin to provide literature that people could go and study. Go study African history, culture. So that was the first one. Then also with the room that I had, we had speakers, we had some rituals that we did, different things that people weren't used to. And I still think that to a great extent, that's still a great need, and especially, I mean, the school system is atrocious. There's never really been at a public school level since the so-called integration period. There's never been really any real education for African American people. So that's still, being in the dark leaves you vulnerable. So that's still a big issue. But the next one, so that's how it started, right? But the next one became the idea of being in charge of your own world. So when I say entrepreneurship, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not just talking about making money. I'm talking about the reality of living on this planet is that as human beings, we have always created whatever we needed to survive and thrive on this planet. After this enslavement period, we lost our foothold on how to function on this planet. So now, in a very dependent orientation, we're constantly waiting or complaining, and many times begging for our oppressors to act right and provide for us the things that we feel we rightly deserve.
So, what cultural context or verbiage best describes how we deal with that? Black nationalism, some other term?
Well, I don't really deal with those terms again because people have different ideas about whatever they think those things mean and how they respond to them. So I'd rather stay much more concrete with things like dependency versus not being dependent. like being innovative or not being innovative, like being responsible for your existence or abdicating your responsibility for your existence.
Proactive instead of
Proactive
reactive.
instead of reactive. Yes, exactly. Some very essential things we have to do that as a group we're not doing. And of course, there are pockets of people that are. As a group, I'm saying we're still in the plantation hope master do right level at this point. See, so let me give you a couple of simple things. Like, I drive around. When I'm with young people, especially college, really young college, I just look around like you can look in this room right here. See, on the one hand, we're saying we're unemployed, right? You say, well, if you're unemployed, but you got to eat, you have to stay somewhere, protect your body at minimum. You're going to need water for sure. How could you be unemployed? See, everything in here, somebody had to make it. It didn't just pop up. Somebody had put time in to make this table. Somebody had put time in to make that plate, that silverware, this cup, that camera we're using. Somebody had to create that. It didn't come out of nowhere. We are the inventors of almost everything we take for granted for. What happened to our inventing process? Right? So this is what I mean about dependency. Sitting around waiting for life to get better versus simply creating a life that's better. It's in our hand at any moment. I remember many years ago, there was this little show on television. And like many times they have these conversations about race, and they have a few 10, 15 people on these panels, and many things are discussed. Oftentimes it's just a crazy argument between two sides that don't agree, which doesn't help. But one of the interesting things that came up in that panel, Tony Brown was on that panel, Sister Soldier was on that panel. And the question was raised, the day when Rosa Parks did not get up on that bus, what did we learn from that? People had all kinds of things to say, and then Tony Brown just took it right to the point. He said, what we realized that day is we could have been riding in front of the bus the whole time. And that's what I'm talking about. For me, it's all about being the way that I want to be, living the life that I choose to live, and creating that life regardless of the challenges that are in front of me. Nobody's going to tell me I can't live this life I'm trying to live, which is maybe a higher type of life than anybody expects or was relegated to the slaves. I don't have to live that way. See, I can choose to live the way that I choose to live. And if I embrace my own culture, there's certain things that are going to be a part of that, like other people probably not even going to be involved in because it's not a part of their culture. You see? So for 17 years, I ran a school, my own school. I created that school. I created the way that we taught the children. I based it on understanding African tradition. I based it on understanding the African definition of a human being. So we did things a lot different than what they do in public school. A lot of people were amazed at the performance of my children, yet they were frightened by the concepts that I used. I spent the first 45 minutes every morning doing nothing but rituals with my children. It didn't matter whatever the backgrounds were, we all did the same thing every morning, which included a little bit of meditation and yoga and different stuff that people don't normally do in school.
So was this to bring about solidarity and having everybody comfortable with being the same and doing similar and
I don't think there's one explanation or one definition. I think it's once we understand this culture, and this culture is telling us that we are multi-dimensional, then a number of things have to be done. Right? But again, the definition of an education, even what is an education? In the African tradition, the education is a process of initiation into the discovery of one's true self. That's what the whole process is all about. And on the way to that discovery, which also means understanding your power. Like a human being is a collection of powers. Like to understand that.
And what type of things help the youth arrive at this point?
There are many things. There are many things, but what I remember even growing up in the black community when it was separate and unequal is that our teachers and administrators, they were all clear that what they were doing was social and spiritual. They were clear on that. And they approached us that way. So, for example, the idea of a student being considered disabled, unable to learn, that hadn't entered the world yet. We didn't have any of that. So we had no learning disabled children. It didn't exist yet. We didn't have any hyperactive children when I grew up. Let me show you how deep it is. I was in 5th grade. That means I'm like 11 years old. All black school, all black faculty, in the hood. About 600 plus students in the school. Every day at 12:30, all the teachers got time off, 20 minutes, to go and do whatever they wanted to do. And they would usually go down to the teacher's lounge. So imagine the whole school, 600 plus students, not a single teacher in any class. They're all down at the lounge hanging out for about a half an hour. It simply would tell one person in the class, say, you're going to be the monitor while I'm away. So you put your head down. You don't have to go to sleep. You can take a nap if you want to, but there'll be no talking for the next half an hour. And if there's a problem, I'll find out when I get back. And they tell the monitor, if you got to go to the restroom, just ask so-and-so. And then they would leave. So I went through that every day. Never had a problem. Didn't have no kid acting up.
All right, peace, everyone. As you see, that's on Black Intelligentsia Summer Urban Empowerment Tour. Please go check it out if you like. But I'm finna call myself blacking out, getting off the channel for a sec, because I feel I've done my job. I'll let you know what a video was at if you want to see it. So I'm about to depart.